Welcome to the second lesson, the communication with the caller. I am Igor Vitale, psychologist, and I explain you how to use techniques to increase the quality of communication with the caller. The conversation has different features compared to face-to-face communication process. Whoever speaks on the phone cannot monitor other nonverbal signs. In fact, some information is lost. But it seems on the phone, for this reason, the number of interruptions and long breaks is lower. Telephone communication, especially in the emergency and rescue field, must be particularly effective. The emergency dispatcher must have sufficient personal and professional maturity to enable him to understand the cognitive, emotional, and behavioral communication experience. It's important for the operator to control communication, to achieve active listening, to recognize all the incongruities, and to get collaboration even from the difficult people, for example, aggressive psychiatric patients and children. An important role of the 112 dispatcher is to get caller information. The information capacity is defined as the sum of the useful information obtained during the call. The information can be deduced directly by analyzing what the caller says voluntarily or indirectly through a logical deduction by the dispatcher. During a phone call, several types of information can be collected in the following key areas: the place, where; the type of incident, what; the severity of incident, how; time analysis, onset and evolution of the incident; the way, how; indication of suspicious vehicles, possible direction of movement of persons; victim, who calls, and witnesses, so who. Some example questions regarding the place are summarized as follows: where help is needed, where the accident occurred, where are they found, victims and witnesses, where it's necessary to establish a contact, address, neighborhood, nearby shops and other issues, type of place, residence, camp, school, park. A second group is the type of incident, the need for action, need for intervention of specialties, some medical intervention, information about the patient, age, gender, state of consciousness. The severity of incident, what happened and how, what weapons were involved and in what way, what medication or alcohol are involved, what kind of wounds, threats, risks. Another important area is the time analysis. Calls appearing during an incident should be considered as having major priority. If someone calls while capturing a theft, an aggression, a crime, should act immediately. This call also checks whether the caller remains in line or not. Increased attention should be paid to verbal terms relating to the moment. For example, now happened. These words can refer to events that took place about 10 minutes ago. Another key area, as we said, is how. And so we should check the weapons involved, the type of weapons, pistols, rifles, machetes, machine guns, white guns, others. Description, revolver, semi-automatic, automatic, color, caliber, ammunition, number of weapons. And some information about the caller, the injury, the presence, how many people are injured, and many other questions. Regarding the description of people, an important thing is to use standardized and shared system for describing people, because if the participants and all the employees involved in managing an emergency has different system to describe people, obviously there is no common knowledge and no common way of communication between them, and so this can be a problem for an accurate description of people. The use of this system makes it possible to minimize misunderstanding between different emergency operators. Some of the frequently analyzed features are ethnicity, sex, height, weight, hair color, eye color, scars, tattoos, mustache, glasses, and other relevant information. And we can say the same for the description of vehicles. Also for vehicles it's important to have standardized information, color, year, model, style, accessories, condition and license number. Let's study now a second part of this lesson called framing the color. As stated above, a particularly important role of dispatcher is to put the caller in a profile and to extract information to align his communication to his own communication. As described above, there is a lot of information that can be obtained through direct questions, but information can be obtained even indirectly. One of the useful elements to fit the caller is the age and the vocabulary used to him. The voice may reveal certain emotional states. For example, a slow tone and low volume may be related to a depressed person, a fast and sharp one may be an anxious person. It's useful for the dispatcher to use primarily the same rhythm of communication with the caller and then to modify it in the desired direction, so as to implicitly induce a change in caller reporting, more direct, informative and fast for the slow caller, more calm and focused on the action to be taken for the anxious caller. Below, I will describe some errors that may occur at the time of analysis. The first error is calls are always the same. Not all calls are equal. Even in very similar cases, if similar events occur, additional information or indicators should be sought, indicating a change in the course of the incident. The dispatcher acts as a researcher who collects data and evidence in any situation, even when everything seems obvious just because there have been similar cases faced. Experience improves data collection, avoiding the assumption of what is happening in that situation. Another key error of the dispatcher is this. This call does not seem real. It's important not to show distracting the caller just because the conversation does not seem real. Many callers who are in danger can talk in a strange way because they are in a state of shock or confusion. Crisis modifies the way the caller acts and responds significantly. Another error is the caller is hysterical. The high voice level of the caller should not be automatically an indicator of a high level of priority. Each person reacts in a different way to crisis. Some people shout, others talk slowly. Another error is this one. The caller is not very intelligent because he speaks very slowly. Do not assume that the elderly or those who don't know the current language are people who have no quality information. Low voice can be related to the fear faced by the person or highlights a risk of not being discovered in a particular situation. Another error is a very common error is this one. The person often rings, so the call is not important. When calling the caller, it's necessary to analyze some aspect of verbal communication, namely, the order of words used by the caller reflects the psychological order and the priority of the caller. Which is why it's very important to carefully follow the words used at the beginning of the call. Let's see some way to analyze the speech. The literal repetition of words indicates a high level of stress. The caller autocorrection are not an indicator of call falseness. New information may appear as the site of incident is explored. Verbalizing contradictory information at different times but issues that needed to be deepened. It's important to analyze the vocabulary used by people to understand the general level of culture. In any case, it's always useful to use a simple and clear language by the dispatcher. The use of slang terms, dirty words, words that refer to anger indicate a negative state and are certainly expected in an emergency call. The courtesy, the polite terms, for example, you have goodwill, hello, are unexpected in emergency calls because they suggest a positive mental state. so it's necessary to ask additional questions for having new data. Now we will see how to get control in the communication. It's important to obtain data, but at the same time we should manage correctly the communication, leading the person to give us information, the important one, and to select the proper way to react to the emergency. So we will see some techniques to use during the communication. Orders is the first one. They must be used with people who, at least apparently, are lost in details that are not strictly incident-related and unnecessary in an emergency or not prioritial information. So use the imperative form. Tell me what you saw. Give me some information about your friend. Tell me how I can help you today. Another important technique is called first X and then Y. When formulating answers with two variants, question with or, so two options, two alternatives in the question, it may be useful to determine the alternative that is suggested as a second step. Placing the best option at the end increases the likelihood of it being chosen. Then there is the use of negative terms. Thinking and language are closely linked. For this reason, it's especially important to pay attention to the words you use and the words the caller uses. Some mental processes produce a reduction in degrees of freedom at the mental level, and of course, this influences the translation of thoughts into behavior. This is why avoiding the use of words with negative charge the caller. Generalization. One of the most dangerous processes is probably generalization. Generalization has a tremendous power to influence, create very convincing mental scenarios because it simplifies, and therefore potentially very dangerous. It's useful that when the generalization mechanism appears in the caller's conversation, the dispatcher should reinterpret the words as in the following examples. For example, one may say, "No one understands me," and the answer by the dispatcher should be, "Those who do not understand you." This repetition leads to a new focus for the caller. "Nobody has never understood me." "He has never understood me," for example. The answer can be, "How many times you have spoken to this person?" Another question, another sentence that is a generalizing one can be, "I have everyone against me." And the answer by the dispatcher should be, "Those who are against you," so is reformulating some way what the caller is saying. It's important to answer to this generalization promptly. Another technique is called corax. A way to use paradox in telephone communication uses the procedure known in literature as corax. It can be schematized in this way. Over a dangerous statement running positive words such as "it's just because you are so," insert a convenient argument. There is then the chiasm. This is a procedure used when creating new mental scenarios for breaking out the usual schemes to suggest new perspective. The dispatcher needs to imagine such options quickly. It's a task that requires considerable imagination and improvisation skills. In situations of emotional pressure, lack of time, logistics, and difficult technological complication can make this technique even more difficult. This type of technique can also lead to confusion. It's a technique to be used only in the context of strong resistance, in which case confusion can fluidize the process of change. This technique is based about the following scheme. A cause B, B cause. Here's some example. Do you want to kill yourself because you're desperate, or desperate because you want to commit suicide? Okay, so this formula creates confusion. A, B, B, A. This is the formula. Do you feel vulnerable because they all persecute you, or all persecute you because you feel vulnerable? A causes B, B causes A. Did you run away because your control was too much, or did you control yourself too much because you threatened to run away from home? A, B, B, A again. Are you crying because you're insecure, or are you insecure because you're crying? Are you crying because you are unsafe, or are you unsafe because you are crying? Again. Are you alone because no one wants you, or no one wants you because you're alone? Okay, so these are a confusion technique that can be useful in a specific way, and you have to be very prompt to use it easily and to get again the control over the communication. Now let's see some other techniques used and strategies for managing emergency. First one is called mirroring, and this technique is used to create connection with the caller. Mirroring is repeating keywords or phrases that the caller barely has used to focus attention on key issues or words, exactly the same. Another technique is called emotional labeling and consists on attributing an emotional or mental state. For example, you feel very frustrated. This technique has the role of recognizing the caller's emotion and identifying them. Another important technique is using pauses effectively. Use a break, a pause just before and or shortly after saying something significant. This strategy allows you to pay considerable attention to the caller in one aspect. Change the tone and volume of voice. Also, this will allow the particular attention and focus on some specific words. Then we have another technique called minimal encouragement. Giving verbal agreements like "I understand" allows the caller to hear that is being listened. You do not have to use "okay" as encouragement, because this can lead to defensive reaction, because the person does not feel in an okay situation and could replicate this word with crisis and with more aggressive behavior. In addition, the term "okay" will be perceived as an indirect consent to proceed in a certain way, and maybe the caller is not proceeding in a good way, so it's not good to say "okay," but "I understand" or other encouragement techniques. The next technique is very important to focus correctly the attention of the caller, and is called verbal tracking. When a caller deviates from the subject, it is appropriate to get back to the more important issue with phrases that block what is said before, without shaking him. For example, "How did 1 month ago relate to the issue you are talking to me now?" Or, "I apologize, I cannot understand the link from this sentence to subject." The best way, instead of "I don't understand what you say," or "what you tell me is not useful," or "this information is useless," "if you speak fast, I do not understand anything," you should use something that "I don't understand. How do you connect X with another topic?" Some callers talk without stopping, often when they are at the top of their emotional peak. For this reason, in some cases, it's necessary to interrupt them. Just a moment, can you repeat what you said before? How this concerns and refers to the problem. Okay, so stop the subject to getting back to the previous situation and previous topic to have the information correctly. Paraphrasing, using your own words to verbalize concept of the ideas of the caller. This technique consists of repeating what the caller has said with your own words and has significant advantages. You need to listen properly to what the caller was saying. You give feedback to the caller. This helps to increase clarity, reduce misunderstandings. This allows you to make correction or interpretations. People are satisfied that they are being listened. It can reduce the escalation of anger. is an excellent tool for managing the state of crisis. Paraphrasing helps reduce judgment, reduce listening barriers. Paraphrasing is used when we are not sure what the caller tells us and starts with "as I understand, you're saying to me that," and then put your rearrangement on what the people is saying. Clarification. It consists of asking questions to get more precise information, more accurate information. This is a technique related to paraphrasing and summary. Clarification, you can use it when you are not sure of the significance of caller's communication. Consider also that there are cultural and generational differences. In conclusion, communication is a complex process. Be especially effective when operating in context of relief, rescue, and emergency become a real strategic mission. Now, let's study the behavioral and listening strategies. First one, be prepared. Be prepared to receive and provide relevant information. The first word spoken by the caller might be the most important. The mind rearranges the information in terms of priority. This is often revealed by the way the caller reordered the word during his phone call. The first information is often the one that has greater interest and attention for the caller. Just answer to the phone quickly. Usually it should not sound more than 3 times until the answer. Respond in a unique way. The introduction of 112 dispatcher has the function of making it clear to the caller that he called the right person. For example, 112, what is the emergency? Okay, so just one way, unique way. The way you answer to the phone will set the tone of the whole call. If you are short and rough, the caller can respond in the same way. If you are professional and polite, the caller can better answer your communication. It's not easy to relate to people in crisis. In any case, it's a duty of dispatcher to remain calm, no matter how difficult the caller is. This is how you increase your chance of getting the right information. Speak clearly. Speaking clearly means not just using a moderate rhythm and volume, but also selecting the most appropriate vocabulary for the person you are facing. In a discussion with a child, it's better to use "what is the street number" instead of "what is the street numbering," for example. All callers deserve respect. One of the specific attributes is to maintain a basic level of politeness. There are times when it will be necessary to keep the caller connected to the line for a longer time to get more information. Other times, when you need to answer a call, explain and motivate your needs, always in a polite way. People are more willing to accept requests if they are motivated. Another important technique is demonstrate with the tone of your voice that you have interest in the person who calls. Avoid always an inflection in the voice that can make your communication look like a challenge. Demonstrate with the tone of your voice that you have interest in the person who calls. Avoid inflection in the voice that can make your communication look like a challenge. It's preferable to use in communication feedback and listening methods empathic. Callers can be anxious when silence comes from the interlocutor. Ensure call safety. Determine whether the caller is secure in the position he is in. Get more information about the caller's context. Do not be influenced by personal prejudice and opinions. The emergency dispatcher is related to people of different ethnic and cultural backgrounds. Avoid phrases like "yes, I've heard these stories many times," or get first-hand information when possible and use open question in the end. In moments of stress, some people can quickly answer questions without really paying attention to the content of the answer. They can respond with yes without listening to what you're told because they are in the time in a moment of crisis. Avoid guided questions and conclusions. Whenever you interrupt the caller with questions or statements that actually play a guiding role, you can suggest some personal responses or views that affect the caller. Caller interruption when not needed at the time when information is provided may reduce the quality of information. For example, if the question is how bad is the boy, it's important to wait until the person answers, and then ask another question. If added, for example, he fall in the shower, certain interpretation may be offered. The caller sometimes cannot explain what happened during the incident. Sometimes he voluntarily circumvents information. For example, in murder cases where the killer calls himself, he claims that he had found the body. Use accelerators. The acceleration technique allows you to suggest a quick response. It's a valuable technique to save time and to tell to the caller that he will take care of his promptness. An example of an acceleration technique is this. I need you to respond quickly to some questions so we can quickly get the information we need. Using the term quick and short, suggesting directly that the intervention is quick and that a quick response is expected. For the false calls have a particular application. The information obtained is a report of people who are not always real data. During false calls, it's very important to ensure that the same seriousness in communication as the assumption that the call is false may not coincide with reality. If an adult contacts a child after a child's call, and he reports that the child simply joked on the phone call should not be closed assuming that the situation is resolved, but you should continue with asking a few questions. How old is the child? What is the name of the child? Can I talk to the child? Once you are in contact with the child, you need to check if the child was joking or if there were problems at home and the child tells the truth. Also note the tone of voice if the child is hesitant or creating some problems with his tone of voice, revealing anxiety, stress or other bad emotion not related to joking. Another important topic is focusing on cognitive flexibility and empathy. Major spread and structure of protocols used in Dispatcher 112 may seem to be a very repetitive and schematic thing, and in this case there is no need for flexibility and creativity in communicating with the caller, but it's needed to apply the protocol. Using protocols is certainly the best way to build a scientific model for emergency call, because it can always be studied and optimized, selecting the correct use of the questions. The words that can be used to optimal response mode, the most appropriate success rate and reliability. Each protocol can be scientifically studied. However, the use of protocol should not turn into habit. Always and only use the protocol even in cases where it's obvious that that protocol is not working, and the protocol cannot applied in all 100% cases and situations. In fact, effective communication between the dispatcher and the caller must not be just a protocol communication, but also interactive, personalized compared to the communication used by the caller. Therefore, the protocol is not always sufficient to handle the call. Let us think of cases where the caller shows resistance to provide information. The conflict with the caller, the suspected psychopathology, and another situation where it is necessary to use effective communication to change a caller's point of view. So let him collaborate. For this reason, cognitive flexibility and empathy are two key skills for emergency dispatching. Empathy is defined in psychology as the ability to understand the mood, emotion, and feelings of a person in a specific situation. Cognitive flexibility is the ability of the dispatcher to adapt the new learnings to situations and to adapt with dexterity to different mental states. Active listening is certainly one of the most useful communication techniques to stimulate empathy in case of telephone communication. In phone communication, the basic aspects to be considered are verbal and paraverbal communication, verbal and related to the tone and quality of voice. Effective listening is based on content analysis, so what the caller says, and context analysis, the specific meaning of a statement and all circumstances and available information, the general meaning of communication. Contextual analysis includes background noise and other clues about a specific situation. Another important thing is what the caller does not say and does say. Often the communication techniques are focused on the action and verbalization of the person. However, even omissions are very relevant and important. Consider that there may be callers who, despite difficulties, do not ask verbally and directly for help, or the caller omits some information. Now, in the last part of this lesson, I want to show you how to communicate in cases in which you suspect that there is a psychopathology. Obviously, you cannot know if this psychopathology exists in the caller, but you can suspect, and so use communication strategies tailored for these cases. Let's analyze some important different categories. The first one is the use of techniques for cases of suspected depression. Allow slow responses. Use open question and be prepared for long breaks, long pauses. Use an empathetic tone, understandable. Reassure the person with the tone of the conversation. Identify the feelings of the caller, even the feelings of anger, resentment, pain. This technique will allow you to tell the caller that it's okay to express his emotion, and that's how you can talk about it. Be patient while waiting for the answer. The depressed person speaks slowly. Avoid using close people and intermediates in communication. If the person is depressed, could increase his sense of guilt. Postponing possible autoaggressive action is a preferred strategy in the place of attempt to try to change a person's mood. Identify and reject in an understandable way generalization and terms like all, always, whenever, nothing. Do you misunderstand the self-attack phrases? It's my fault. I must blame myself for everything. Ask specific questions. Discuss real-world issues rather than abstract terms. Topics such as the world is a terrible place can be conveyed with different terms and more concretely words. What has happened in particular that makes you feel that world is terrible? So bring the person to action and concrete things, not abstracts, because abstract is obviously lead to many interpretation and the depressed people will tend to negative ones. If the caller refers to suicide, try to delay as much as possible action to distract the subject and try to determine with the help of the police whether the person is planning a suicide. In some rare cases this is called suicidal by cop. Look for action, objects, people who can give hope and apply this option. Attention to some sudden improvement of the state of mind can be predictive of suicide, so if you have an improvement in his state, it is not necessarily something positive. Sometimes we can observe this also before suicide. Refer to the basic needs of person. Speak and repeat affirmation to see if the person understands what you're saying slowly and clearly. Avoid conversation pointing to a change of mood for good. Don't you see that life is beautiful? Don't you see that you have good luck? There's someone that is worse than you. Do it for your children. This conversation, these words are not useful in depression cases. Always, many times, these sentences can lead to a worst state of mind. So these are some guidelines, but obviously each person is different and can react differently, and you should be very focused on considering that the person you're talking may have a depressive state. Now let's see the new protocol about cases when you suspect psychosis. Use always a tone of voice that do not judge, firm, calm and respectful. Do not try to correct their hallucination, listen to critical perception that they spoke about. For them, their hallucinations are real if these perceptions are not respected. For paranoid personality, for example, it's as if you do not confirm that paranoid and the idea that you are against them, so is not suggestible. Do not go directly into the subject of hallucination. Ask to describe the situation in a very neutral way. Use the paraphrase technique in a way in which you do not judge, because judging situation can lead to extreme reactions. The paraphrasing technique refers to the repetition of the sentence of the questioner as a questioner. For example, life is terrible. You mean life is terrible? Allow the person to explain in order to create trust and empathy. Focus on negotiation or problem solving. Allow the report to be created over time. Do not try to approach a problem immediately and directly. Avoid getting in his vision of reality to change it from the inside. Very dangerous and difficult by a phone call. Anticipate aggressive responses. Answer asking for more information, clarifying and paraphrasing responses. Face the subject freeze by providing constant reassurance. Now let's study what to do with cases of people you suspect suffer of panic attack. Use close-ended questions. This mode evokes short answers which tends to adjust the breathing. How old are you? What do you do? Where are you? Try to locate pain in a spatial and limited area of the body. Pain is at the head of chest, and then try to minimize that area with the specific question. Specify the location of the pain in detail, more to the left or more to the right, how many fingers under that specific point. All these procedures focus the attention on a specific and little point of the body, and so focus the attention of the caller in a specific way, and so distracting him from other negative thinking. Use the scale of mood. Say from 1 to 10, how would you rate this feeling of anxiety? And just tell me something more accurate, very accurate. This technique can be reused during the call to ratify the presence of possible changes. So before was 7, now is 5. So you can ratify, you can repeat this, and increase in quality of the situation. Do not show that you are surprised or amazed. The panic attack is one of the most common syndrome and can be strengthened if you show surprise or other reaction. Then this can increase the panic attack and the sense of anxiety. Reassure the caller saying that panic is harmless, do not affect you directly. Physiological reaction give you a sense of worth and pain, but have no health effects. Use distraction techniques. Ask for simple tasks like the opening and closing of a hand, holding a straight arm, moving the toes, keeping the balance of one leg. The way to distract the subject can be to anchor it to some aspects perceptible by the person. You feel the air that enters in the lung, feel the ground you're standing on, so you move the attention continuously of the person in different way to distract him from the panic. Use verbs and words that involve the end of a crisis. So subsequently, successively, after that this is passed, then you use some words to suggest that the panic will finish. Avoid repeating negative words too often, such as anxiety, fear, panic. If the panic attack is significantly reduced, it may be helpful to ratify the success of using positive reinforcement messages such as "Congratulations, you were good, it went well, I feel you're more calm, it went well, it's your merit." Another important topic is obviously for people who threaten suicide. Ask the person to tell you if he thinks of self-harm to create damage himself, to auto-aggressive acts. And I give you some guidelines saying you that the manual of 1 minute may save a life contains much more detailed information. I give you the main one. Discuss openly without being shocked, without disapproval and judgment. Ask questions about person's medical history. Ask if she has ever suffered from depression. Earn time. Use arguments like, "For this reason, you can give yourself time to talk me." Avoid expressions such as "why," "when did you decide," because you're suggesting that he has already decided why you should not suggest this. So it's not important. Avoid the use of sentences that starts with "why." Avoid using a paternalistic mode. For example, "I'm older than you, you're not doing the right thing." Important way to react is, "I'm there to help you in your choices and not to keep your choice." Main traumatizer have thoughts of suicidal plans. Some people follow those thoughts when faced with periods of stress. Okay, so we finished our second lesson, and then we will study the third technique, the third lesson of 1 minute may save a life. I make your congratulations for this.